Okay, welcome back. Welcome back, and let's get into the very grounded and sometimes daunting subjects of technology for people, technology and really social media. So, this is mostly a primer, and we're getting into technology, the web, and social media. For some of you, this will be elementary. For some of you, there will be a few nuggets in here that are priceless, and for some of you, this will be a whole new world. So, even if you think you know everything about this, and perhaps you do, go ahead and stick with me. And if you're overwhelmed by the very idea of websites and social media and technology and how to maximize that for your business, let me assure you that this is not full on. This is just sort of primer, sort of to get you ready for what we're going to do later on in the course. So, for most students and clients, what I have noticed is that the module on technology is and has historically been the most confusing, daunting, and for some frustrating and confusing module of all the modules in this training. In fact, I think it used to be module 3, and I found that really didn't work in the first version of this course, this being version 4, mostly because people, well, frankly, just disappeared. In the second and third version, I played around with having it both the very first module, which everybody was brain dead, and it ends up being the way it is now, which is sort of filtered throughout the course in appropriate doses. So my intention is to make this whole module as simple and as easy for you as humanly possible. And we're going to space it out over the training when and where appropriate, and we're going to walk you through it step by step. And I'm going to explain the purpose of each piece and how they fit together, having you do only the pieces necessary to maximize your success. What I want you to really understand is once you have control over this particular aspect of your business, you will not only massively increase your results, but you will feel empowered and powerful. And your success will be in your own hands, fully. Now, additionally, you will know at least enough to keep your consultants honest. All right, so let's dive in. We're not going to do a whole lot with these things right now. We're just going to set you up so you are ready to go when we do actually go into the full tech module later in the course. So let's talk about what you'll need and why you'll need them. First of all, what you'll need is at least one, but I recommend 2 different modern web browsers. I actually use 4. And there's a reason for that. Now, they all have their own benefits and drawbacks. All of them are more secure and faster and more stable than Internet Explorer. If you're still using Internet Explorer, I urge you to shift to any other web browser. Here are the 4 that I recommend: Opera, Firefox, Safari on the Macintosh platform. I think it's also available for Windows, and Chrome by Google. Now, there's a reason for all of these, and again, they all have their own benefits and drawbacks, but I'm going to recommend you download at least 2 of these if you're not already using them. Now, Internet Explorer is what still most people on the planet are using. The last metrics I looked at was that something like 65% of the people are still using Internet Explorer. You want to make sure you're not only for security, but also because it's not the most compliant in terms of web standards, actual technology. In other words, your website's going to look different in Internet Explorer than it will in these. These are far more compliant in terms of technology standards. So most, in fact, I think the themes I'm using on this side have a Internet Explorer fix. I might also just have it set to tell you to upgrade your web browser if you're still using Internet Explorer. But I'm going to recommend that you download one or more of them. You can even download all of them. I use them for different things. The 2 I seem to use the most are Chrome and Google Chrome and Firefox. But I also check things out on occasion in Opera and also Safari. And again, here are the big 4 in no particular order: Opera, Firefox, Safari, and Chrome. So if you're not already using one or two of those, go ahead and pause the recording now and download one of those. If you are already using them, great, let's go. So you need a modern web browser. Next, you need an FTP application, or FTP client, we call it. FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol. You'll want to be using this as you build your website or add things to your website, whether it's an audio file or a photo or who knows what. And there's a couple I'm going to recommend. If you're on the Macintosh platform, I highly recommend Transmit from Panic Software, and you can get that at panic.com/transmit. It's the one I use. Yes, you have to pay for it. Yes, there are free ones, and I just absolutely love Transmit from Panic for the Macintosh platform. For Windows, I recommend FileZilla. Now, you can also just do a search and go ahead and find one for yourself that is highly recommended on whatever platform you're using. If you're on Unix, again, you're probably tech savvy enough that you don't even need to hear this portion of it. I would also say that any of the FTP clients listed at this link, and if you're not familiar with this site, lifehacker.com, get familiar with it. It is an incredible blog. It just has all sorts of ways in which you can improve your tech experience and generally your life experience. Lifehacker.com really is an appropriate domain name for it. This lists 5 of the best FTP clients according to them and the testing they've done. And just to make it easier on you, here's that link even bigger. So go to lifehacker.com. You could also just go to lifehacker.com and search 5 best FTP clients, and you will find it there. So go ahead and pause the recording now and go ahead and find that in whatever your web browser is. And again, if you have not already downloaded I'm going to call it modern web browser, please do that. And also download your FTP client. So pause the recording now and do both those things. Great. Okay, welcome back. So what you need is a modern web browser, and you also need an FTP application. Why do you need an FTP application? A lot of people have asked this. And I'm aware that most web hosting services have a web browser-based FTP option. So, why not just use your web browser? Well, first of all, anything web-based is a little bit quirky. I still recommend getting one of those FTP applications. Your web browser is going to have it's not meant to be a file transfer protocol application. Some are better than others, but for the most part, it's kind of quirky. And it'll make your life easier, and you won't have to deal with the quirkiness of your host's web-based version. I can't tell you how many errors I've seen in a web browser based on whatever was going on with the way the web browser was interacting with your hosting service. You just want to avoid that. You get an FTP client and you get to avoid all of that. It makes your life simpler. It may seem like it's not. It's like, well, now I need to learn a new application. It actually will make it a lot easier. You'll have a lot more errors if you use a web browser for transferring files up to your hosting space once we build your website, or if you already have your website built, once we're adding stuff to it. You'll have a lot more errors than if you had an FTP client, and it will be simpler, cleaner. It'll be a more rapid transfer of files, all of that. So, again, if you haven't already done that, go get one of those now. Go to lifehacker.com, what have you. Hey, next let's talk about social media, and we're going to talk about Twitter first. So what is Twitter? Twitter is simply what they call a micro-blogging tool. Now, maybe you've heard of Twitter. Maybe you've already using it. Maybe you've made fun of it. Maybe you've heard people making fun of it. Calling people twits or what have you. It's a microblogging tool, and it is going to be an integral part of your social media strategy. And we'll get to best practices and all that later on. But it's a newish. It's been around for a few years now, but it's a newish way, concise way of communicating and marketing, and really doing it in a targeted way. So we'll talk more about Twitter specifically later. But for now, just trust me and go sign up. We'll talk about best practices and how to integrate it, and also what to do and what not to do, etc. If you already have a Twitter account, but it has not been focused on your business, or you haven't had that filter in mind, maybe you've used it as a way to simply communicate with your friends, or whatever, you'll want to actually go get another account, get an additional account. So go ahead and do that now. But before you do that, you're going to want to choose a username, and let's talk about that for a second. Of course, you can get an account at twitter.com. When you choose a username, that name is going to appear in the URL. There's two different schools of thought on it. One is you can use your own name. The other is you can use a search engine optimized username, an SEO optimized username. In other words, something that says what you do or what you are in the username. So, for instance, using myself as an example, mine is twitter.com/Jason McClain. My username is Jason McClain. That's using my own name, and there's reasons for that. There's benefits to that, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Why you would go with one or the other of these. And the second one, I could go with something like the coach's coach, for instance. So it would be twitter.com/the coach's coach, which would say what I do in the URL, in the username itself, right away explaining what it is that I do. Or I could use something like, evolutionary guide or evolutionary_guide. Those are the two different schools of thought. First is that you use your own name. Now, I'm personally always in favor of using your own name. There's too many other ways to optimize for search what it is that you do. And I would just always rather use my own name for stuff like that. So if people are searching for me, they find that. Searching for, evolutionary guide, well, nobody else really owns that name anyway, so that would be acceptable. The coach's coach, well, there might be just so much competition in that doesn't actually do me any good. Now, traditional SEO would say, well, nobody cares about your name. Don't use your name as any sort of keyword. Well, that's true to some degree. If you're just selling something online, and you don't necessarily need to put you don't need to purchase that keyword if you're using Google AdWords or something like that. On the other hand, pretty much everybody Googles you first before they work with you, or it's one of the things that, if you haven't Googled yourself lately, by the way, make sure you do that sometime this week, just to see what's out there, and also just to see how your own sites, if you already have websites, show up. Or not. It's not a big deal at first. You really don't necessarily want your natural search. If somebody just goes online, they're not obviously going to be searching for you necessarily. They'll do that after they meet you. So anyway, I always lean towards using your own name, and either one is a perfectly valid approach. So I almost forgot. Of course, it's free. So go there now, and if you haven't signed up for a Twitter account already, go ahead and sign up. If you have signed up, but it's not been a business-oriented account or an account that you use for professional purposes or with that filter on as you behave on Twitter, go ahead and set up an additional account. Okay, so pause the recording now and go ahead and do that. Okay, great. Good. So, back to what you need. You've got a modern web browser. You've got an FTP client or an application. You've got a Twitter account. Next, of course, is a Facebook account. If you don't have one already, go ahead and get one. If you haven't really used it, that's fine too. Just keep it in mind. We'll talk about how to, again, use this for business and what the best practices are. And the underlying theme, by the way, when we do get to that, is with both Twitter and Facebook, is that you cannot be just a marketing machine or a marketing bot. You've got to be a real human being on there with real interests and real real day-to-day lives and all sorts of things. Now, I think that we've reached the age of authenticity, and people would rather know that you have opinions and that you know eat certain foods and all of that than just that you're marketing something. And even if you were just marketing or you're just a link machine, they're gonna stop really paying attention. They're gonna get parent deaf in a way. And of course, make sure you find me and add me on Facebook if you haven't already. And don't worry about filling out the full profile yet. We can get to that. There's definitely ways to optimize that, but for now, just make sure all those accounts are active and you've got those applications. Next, you're going to want to get TweetDeck. On TweetDeck, first of all, what is that? It's a free application for all platforms. When I say all platforms, I mean the iPhone, Macintosh, Windows, Unix, and of course Droid. And what it does is it allows you to easily integrate and update both your Twitter and Facebook accounts in one easy window. So it's a super simple way to streamline your relationship to your social media. You can also add additional accounts. There's other accounts. You can add Foursquare, some of the other social media accounts, so that you can actually just have one application, one window. And it's also, well, frankly, the application is just done very well. TweetDeck is an extraordinary little application. And you can, of course, get it at tweetdeck.com. It's just one of my favorite tools. So if you have not gotten these items yet, go ahead and get to it. You need to stay on track and on pace with this course. So get the web browsers, find an FTP client, get a Twitter account, a Facebook account, and download and install TweetDeck on your desktop computer or your laptop or both, as well as your mobile device if you have one. Okay. That's not the end of the technology stuff. That's really just the beginning. And that's the end of the technology stuff for this week. So let's take a break from that for now. And I look forward to continuing to contribute to you next week. Thank you as always. And may the force be within you.